So, first of all, I have two camera person here, but they are also in the function of, in the position of a director. Luke was alone with all the decisions. You had a director on your side, but you was a co-director too. What it means, in terms of your topic, when you was alone with all this stuff, how it is for you, Luke, to deal with all the decisions in one moment, which can be so intensive, and you feel that is the moment that you have to cover now for your film. What is your thinking? What kind of complex decisions you have to made in this moment?
Just the process of like being in the midst of the accidents, and what was that like? I think it's hard to fully describe because I try to put myself in a place where I'm filming these things so much that it becomes kind of intuitive in terms of the technical side of things. And the cognitive side of things are kind of thinking about from what perspective am I participating in this scene. And so I find myself, when I'm watching through footage, kind of doing the basic things that you need to do to cover a scene, of getting a wide shot, of getting cutaways, of getting reaction shots. All of that kind of seems to happen quite intuitively, and then what I'm really focusing on is what the scene is about, and trying to, in the moment, figure that out and get kind of like the shopping cart of ingredients that I need to communicate that to an audience. When you kind of saw in the scene in the 7-Eleven when they're shopping for things, it's one camera, but there's maybe 6 different types of shots that are used to build the moment. So you have close-ups of the tuna, you have shots of the father, shots of Josue, a wide shot of the store. So I'm kind of running in circles throughout the whole moment and being sure to hold each shot for long enough, but also to get the kind of just the variety of things. So that doesn't fully answer your question about what the accidents were like, but I think there's kind of a busyness that comes with filming a documentary that sometimes keeps you focusing on things that the audience, once they see the film, kind of a different set of things, if that makes sense.
The main question for me is, if you are in a situation, and the situation is real time, you will never get a reply. There's no possibility, and you are thinking also in editing. What is your preference when you make a decision and you have to decide if it's better to find a framing, to find the right image, or is editing, the thinking about editing, what you need, close-ups, wider shots, to think, okay, this scene I have to edit, I have to reduce. And when you are alone with all these decisions, it's real time, it's a very complex thing. What is the preferred, what are the main thoughts in that moment? Editing or storytelling?
Coverage.
Framing?
It's always coverage.
Coverage
is the number one thing. Will I get enough shots to communicate what's going on? And once you feel like you've gotten past that, which is the scene covered, then you can start thinking about how you want to shape it. And I think a lot of the things that Philippe, you were talking about in terms of approach and the feel of the movie are decided before you start filming at all, or in the first kind of few weeks. You figure out what the tone, what the style of the film is, and then it's just a matter of continuing that through all of the moments. So you try to really minimize the amount of actual decisions artistically that you need to make in the moment. Keep it to a set of rules that you've established from the very beginning that you just need to keep following. If you're trying to think about editing, if you're trying to think about cinematography, you're trying to think about meaning and characters all in the moment, you won't be able to think about the basic tools that you need to just cover a scene. And it's a checklist of things.
But you won the cinematographer award in Sundance. That means you have a right feeling for framing.
Yeah, I mean that comes
lighting.
That comes with setting the movie up and figuring out in the first few weeks what the look is, what the approach is, and then it comes down to rules, really specific rules. With Midnight Family, it was I shot on one prime lens. The whole movie was shot on a 24mm prime lens. I established the distance that I would keep from my characters and the vocabulary that the film would use, the types of shots that the film would use. And once that was put in place, it was just a matter of doing it over and over again until the right moments happened.
I can add my... so what Luke just said is very important. And for me too, even though I've been sometime filming as a camera person with two different movies, with two different directors, even though I'm working not only with prime lens but with zoom, I know each movie that I'm going to use, even if it's a zoom lens, only 3 focal points.
Yeah.
And it's might be different on different movies, and also the way I'm filming a medium shot is going to be always the same. I'm going to choose this lens, this distance.
Yeah.
This is the wide shot for this movie. This helps you to keep consistency in the way people, the way you look at the world and the way the viewer will see the world through the camera. But it also helps you not asking yourself the question all the time.
Yeah.
Because it becomes in your body. You know that if you want a close-up, you're going to be here. And you want a long shot, then you want a close-up, you're here. You want a long shot, you do 2 steps, change lens, you have the long shot. And you're going to do that. It helps you clear your mind on what do I choose right now. Yeah. Now, one about the question that Uli was asking, I have maybe more abstract way to speak about it, but maybe it can help. It's all about being in the same time in the present and in the future. You have to be in the present because things are happening in front of you. As you said, sometimes it's happening now and it won't happen again. So you have to be completely focused on what's happening and capture them, and cover them. And at the same time, I am also in the future, because when I'm filming, I'm thinking of 3 persons. I'm thinking of me, myself, what I want. If I want right now a close-up, or if I want now a long shot. I'm thinking of the person I'm filming. If I come close and he doesn't feel good, then I can't stay there. I have to go away. But the main person I'm thinking of is you. It's the viewer. What will they say? And what will they see? And this is being in the future. So it's not exactly thinking of the editing, but it's a little bit thinking of the editing. I know I have to think in the storytelling right now, what should stay? Me, I'm now here, I'm bearing witness of something that is happening in front of my eyes. How should I, at this moment, I'm going back to my mantra, okay? Should I run with the football players or take distance? And I can make those decisions. Of course it's intuitive, but it's intuitive because I have in mind the viewer and what at this moment the viewer would, what would be stronger for the viewer, knowing what I've already been filming, okay? So I don't know if it can help you, but to think of being in the present but thinking of the future, it can help.
Yeah, totally. The one thing that I would add is sometimes I think of observational cinematography almost like jazz, in that you practice and you practice and practice, and in the moment the song starts and it's your turn to solo, you're just kind of reacting to the music around you, and in this very present tense, create a space where you are making decisions, but making them in real time. There's a lot more kind of technical things that are on your mind as well, but that's kind of, when at its best, it's like it's a dance, it's a solo, it's this kind of craft that you have built up with experience.
Both of the films, you have great protagonists, and they touched me in a very emotional way. When you are behind a camera, both of you, have you the feeling that in that moment, that is also that you can be touched by that what happened from the characters, and if it's very intensive, and you had a long period of shooting, but in the end of the day, in final editing, can you find it again on the timeline, this kind of very intensive moments which you had, or when you had this feeling during your shooting, when you saw it through your lens? Is it this feeling that you can transfer it through all the steps until the finished film? Because it was from my point of experience, when I filmed, I found all these scenes at the end of the film.
Totally. I can tell you that in fiction, the people who has to be to have the most discipline are the actors. They have to do their thing in the most precise way. Sometimes even they need to be in a certain place to get certain lights, and they have to be very disciplined. In documentary, and while in fiction, the team, between takes and even during takes, they're more relaxed because it's not on them. In documentary, you need to be very disciplined behind the camera and be very patient. And I can remember hours where nothing's happening. I mean, I'm filming, but I know that nothing's happening because I'm not feeling anything. Until now, each time that I'm feeling something while filming, it's there. But it really needs patience, because if you don't have patience to film if you don't feel that it's strong, it might not be strong after. But if you feel that something strong is happening while you're watching it through the lens, then you won't have surprise after. It depends on storytelling if it will be. It depends on the move. Of the story you're telling. Sometimes there are very, very strong scenes that are not getting into the movie, but not because of the.
Do you use also your camera to push your protagonists a little bit in the direction? You are a hero now, in that moment when I'm very close to you?
Look, of course, one of the first things that I learned it from a sound person. When I was beginning to film with the camera, and there were 3 people just like us, and there was one who was talking all the time. And then the sound person, who was much more experienced than me, came into my ear and he told me, you can control who's going to talk. And then I processed what he told me for long, something like 1 minute, because I really didn't understand. And then let's say that I was the person talking, so the camera was on me. And then Luke was just like he is, his head down. And then I turned the camera to the person who was silent. And magic, within 15 seconds, Luke began to talk. Because the camera was on him. So of course, you have also those moments where you know that if you bring the camera or closer, or you point the camera on a certain person, that's something that it will induce them. And what I like in movies is where it's not completely innocent. I mean, where it's a little, it's shown, where where it's a game. If it's only that, then the movies are boring because you the viewer, you feel that people are doing things only for the camera. But it's the jazz thing and the dance thing is a nice image. It's a dance. You need to know how to dance it, not to push too much, but of course you can control.
I think there have been moments where I'm filming something and like a tear is like dripping down my face because of how intense the emotions are that I'm feeling, and then you go into the edit room and you play it for something and for somebody else, and it's just like totally boring. And I think it gets to this idea of like a film needs to bring somebody into another world, but it needs to do it in a complete way. And it's the difference between watching your favorite soccer team score a goal and win versus a soccer team that you know nothing about. And so what was really challenging with Midnight Family was bringing people into this world and really getting them to know these characters, to know what they were thinking about, what they were trying to achieve, so that when the climax of the film came, you know everything you need to know about them, you're close to them, you know them, that it hits you with the intensity that it hit them. So it's not just about intimacy when you're filming, it's about the way in which the film as a whole crafts and sets up those moments. In screenwriting, it's often called like a plant and a payoff, of like when something is kind of given to the viewer early on in the film that gives them some sort of knowledge. They don't know why they have that knowledge until later in the film when it all comes together and the emotional climax of the film happens. So yes, on one hand, the process of filming is highly emotional, and you are there when your characters are at their best and when they are at their worst, and you experience all of that, but that's only the first step to creating that for the audience.
So I want to open the discussion for the audience. Has anybody a question to the filmmakers? Yes, please. You will have a micro.
No, there's one.
Thanks to your director's sharing. I have a question for Luke. Is that when you display the clips, I was kind of confused that is it a documentary or like feature films? So like, did you intend to like kind of make up the texture of the film? If so, like how did you do that?
Yeah. So it's 100% a documentary, but I think maybe in a slightly different way than Philippe is I really dislike this dichotomy between documentaries and fiction films. I think that it is often very unnecessary. I think that documentaries are films and fiction films are films, and they are different types of stories, but the ways in which those types of films are made don't need to be so differentiated. And the films that I like to make, I think, strive to operate on a similar emotional and aesthetic place that fiction films do. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier, about scene-based stories that are showing people things instead of telling them things, and films that bring you into a world without some of the really kind of manipulative or created tools that a lot of documentaries use, like interviews or like things that are very much about the making of the movie. I don't think those tools are are bad. It's some of my favorite films are completely interview based, or the clip that you showed, Philippe, where you see the camera, like I was just like immediately drawn into those characters, into the making of it. But for my films, I think I like to give people these experiences that aren't necessarily about the making of the movie. So kind of a roundabout way, but it's 100% a documentary, but I think it plays with the same tools that fiction filmmakers use.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for your sharing. So my question is that, do you think the point of a documentary is to document everything and share everything with the audience, or to tell a story? Because as Philippe said, you think that documentary is about the real life, but actually it is not, because the editing is actually a selective process. You cannot put everything in the movie because the time limit. So actually, the dialogues, the things are deliberately selected. So how do you think about the difference between the real life and the documentary? Thank you.
No, of course. Of course, you make choices in editing, and you make choices while filming, as I showed you, and of course, you point the camera here and not there. And this is, of course, you're making a lot of subjective choices when you're making a documentary. And I think that this is the subjective choices are making the documentary. You saw in these movies where there's two cameras, one fixed and one held by a person. The shots that are more, you could think that the objective camera would be the more interesting, the one who will say what is the reality will be the one who's fixed, that nobody handled. But at the end, what feels reflecting the most the reality is the one which is handled by a person, and where you see the world through his subjectivity. So in Luke's movie, you could see all the time in the scene in the 7-Eleven, all the shots that he made, it's his subjectivity to show us the little boy wanting to grab another a can of corn. Okay, because when there's someone behind the camera, then it's kind of a proof that there was a witness to what happened. And I think that documentary, it's that. It's to be a witness, to go and to be there and to bring, as Luke said, to show you what he has seen, what I have seen, and not to show you the real life. What I said about real life is that a documentary will function if people are not asking themselves about how was it made, but when they see it and they say, oh, this is real life, this is how it is, and not thinking too much. Well, that's it.
Yeah, I think it just, all documentaries are subjective. I think when I was talking about my film, I was talking about wanting to put people through the experiences that I felt like I had gone through when making it. But it even comes down to like the relationships that you have with different people, like who you are to your mother or your father is different from who you are to your friend. The way that those different people see your life and think about your life is super different. So there's really no such thing as objectivity when it comes to storytelling. And you should embrace that. You should embrace your perspective, or at least be aware that the choices you're making are dictating the way that viewers will come into the worlds that you're portraying. So, if films were just real life, they would be really, really boring.
So, question?
I wanted to also Philippe as well, I think you shared something that really, like the three positions really kind of just clarified something in my mind. I'm asking this question from the perspective of someone who has been trying to make documentary films starting from last year, and your sharings kind of gave me a lot of ideas. Luke, you first said, you know, 70% of your film was made, you know, sort of at the end when you essentially had a cut of the film, and that you mentioned something about the relationships between you and the characters, like suddenly maturing. I guess there's two parts of the question. One is on like securing access. So at what point did you introduce in your relationship with them, like the idea of like release forms and you know, actually securing the story, and I forgot my other question. Let's just go with that for now.
It's a process. It's you know, like any sort of friendship or any sort of relationship, like it enriches with time. I think with this film, it was just a conversation that I started having with them from day one about what the movie would be about, and trying to keep them very much in the know in terms of what I was thinking as a director, and questioning them when I felt like they were kind of crossing an ethical line, or kind of just really being open and vulnerable and letting them see the process and be part of the process. I didn't show them any footage until the film was really far along. I showed them a cut, essentially as it was locked, but before we went into like color and sound, just to make sure there weren't any like big surprises in terms of how they reacted. But the release forms came, at the very end. But I think I was confident that the permission and the consent was kind of founded in our relationship, not in some like legal document. That's not totally true. I mean, I guess they signed. I had filmed with them for about like the first like 50 or 60 nights, and then had them sign one. And then when I came back the next time, I had them sign one. It's a weird formality of the business, but
I want to also react to what you said. So it's right that it's interesting to hear that 70% of Luke's film has been made in the last 3 weeks, like the 3 days in the last 3 weeks. It's important to hear that those things can happen. But what's admirable is what he said about it, that he and his producer looked at the movie that they've already made, and they said, is it really the movie we want to make? And then they decided to go again and not to give up to what they wanted. I think that behind any good movie that you see, there is this tenacity of the filmmaker not to finish before they feel that they've done their best. I can say the same for Advocate. We had a movie 1.5 years ago. We finished in the editing room, and there was a movie, a possible movie. And we looked at it, and we even showed it to people, even to TV channels. They were saying, okay, so you're now need just to finish. And me and Rachel were, it's not good enough. It's not enough. It's not enough telling the story. We're gonna work more. We're gonna do it more. These tenacities, I can multiply the stories about that. It's important. So of course, it depends on many things, because we need to live out of that, even if it's a work of love. Now about the question about release, it's very strange what happened in the last 20 years, because 20 years ago, nobody needed releases. You know, when you're filming someone and you're half a meter from them, they accept to be filmed.
Right.
The easiest thing that someone can do is to put his head on the camera. So there has been, like in many other fields in our life, hyper-legalization where everything needs to go through papers, but it's really a formality. When people let you film, the best moment to let people film you is after you've been filming them from so close, and then you just explain them that this is what, you don't need it. You need it because other people need it, okay? The reason there are a release form is not between you and the person you're filming. This happened already while filming.
Yeah.
It's for the bureaucracy in the TV channels and insurance that needs to see it on paper.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a nice talk, and now we are waiting for your screening, and yeah, and I wish you, and I think all of you, wish you a big success, a nice journey around the world with the film, and yeah, I wish you all the best for the next project, and happy to see the next film of you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.